What is going on, guys? It's Ethan here, alone this week for episode, I think, number 14 of the Threewind podcast. And I'm so excited to be here today by myself. It was kind of late notice, that's why no one else is here. I'm sure Charlie could have came, and Chance probably could have too. I think Chris Wada is just now getting back from Florida, and Eston has work on Sundays, which we've talked about before. But this was late notice. It kind of snuck up on me. I had a busy day today. I tried to get a streaming setup for gaming for Threewind. I'm really technologically inept. I'm not very good with computers, not very good with stuff like that. And so that's going to take me much longer than what I thought it was going to take. Even though I've done it before, I just totally forget how to do it. So that's why I'm kind of doing this by myself today because it's late notice. I didn't feel like asking any of them to come over to the studio this late notice. So I was completely fine with getting on here and doing it on my own, as I usually am. Of course, I love them being here simply because I'm not as funny by myself as I am with them being here, and of course they're funny too. So I mean, Chance is hilarious, Charlie's hilarious, and Eston and Chris Water are Chris Water's funny in his own right, and then Eston is funny because he's not funny. We get you get it. But I'm here to be here by myself today, and like I promised last week, me and Chance promised you last week more sports this week, and then more sport. Well, what is today? Today is the 5th. So, well, yeah. So two more episodes of sport-related topics. Actually, maybe just one. So let me think. Today's the 5th. So, um, we will record the next episode on the 12th. It'll come out on 13th. Then we'll record 19 and 20. Yeah. So, the episode that comes out on the 20th will be the Christmas draft because we don't want it to come out after Christmas. I think the Halloween draft came out after Halloween. It would have done significantly better if it came out before or on Halloween. So that was a big reason why that was how it was. Um, but yeah, I think that's all the updates I have left to do. I'm so glad you could join us today. If you're watching this on YouTube before I get started, make sure to like and subscribe. I'm really working on YouTube right now. Most of the stuff you hear on this podcast, actually, that's not true. Some of the stuff you hear on this podcast, I've already made specific longer videos on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, go ahead and like and subscribe. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or just from the link on our podcast website on Buzzsprout, then you can go check out the YouTube. Of course, I love when people listen to it, and it's probably a lot easier that way. But if you have the chance to watch the video, I'd love you to check out our YouTube. I think that's all I have to say before we really get into it because I have a lot to cover today, and Charlie's blowing up my phone. Um, yeah, I think we can get right into it. I only have three things I want to cover today as far as sports. So college basketball has had some stuff since the last time we talked. The NBA has had a little bit that I want to talk about, and then college football is the big monster that I want to cover this week, which isn't great because I'm by myself and I'm not the football guy. I am the basketball guy. But I think I know enough about the situations, and I've been following it closer this year. So I think I can give you as much knowledge as I have personally on the situation and what I think. But as far as college basketball goes, the first big situation was Duke losing to Ohio State in their very first game as the number one seed this year. That game was very bad as far as both teams sucked the whole time. Neither team looked like they should have been on a college basketball court, especially for the first half. Um, Duke was up by 14 at one point, I believe. They may have been up 13 going into the half. They were holding on a 6-7 point lead the entire game, and they just choked it away. Ohio State comes back and wins. Some of the major parts of that game, Bankero didn't look great. He struggled and he disappeared in the second half like he has all year this year. Um, and Ohio State, EJ Liddell didn't even play I think it was this happened a week ago, so I'm trying to remember everything. Zed Key, I believe, was their big guy in at the 5 spot that was absolutely destroying Mark Williams. I mean, it wasn't even close. And all in all, Ohio State, I mean, they came out when they needed to come out. I mean, they were down the whole game. Duke didn't look great. You know, Duke never looked like they were going to cement a victory at any point in time during that game. But it was like, it's Duke. They'll hold on, especially against Ohio State, who's not playing very good. I mean, they were turning the ball. Ohio State doesn't look like they have a single guy on their team that knows how to dribble. They were turning the ball over every single time down the court. It was rough. But at the end, they somehow pulled it through. And I think this is great for college basketball. Obviously, Duke beat Gonzaga, and we'll talk about Gonzaga a little bit more here in a second. But for no team to be a real front runner, no team to be considered unbeatable is wonderful for college basketball. It makes it fun again. This era we live in of um, one and done super teams that everyone views as unbeatable, just for them to end up losing because they're inexperienced in the tournament, and a team that isn't as inexperienced ends up winning in the tournament. But for the regular season, it just sucks to watch because you know who's going to win almost every night, in and out, just like the 2015 Kentucky team. As much as I love Kentucky, that team wasn't incredibly fun to watch because you knew they were going to win every game. I mean, I don't mind Kentucky winning every game, but a little bit of parity is nice. But this year I can't tell you a team that I view as unbeatable because I don't think there is one. Um, and that it comes the best examples of that are the two teams that were the top teams just a week ago, and who people viewed as the best teams in college basketball, Gonzaga and Duke. Duke loses to Ohio State in their very first game as the number one team, and Gonzaga loses to Duke and then proceeds to lose to Alabama, a team who is not bad by any means, but not incredible. That game was also rough. Alabama totally dismantled Gonzaga. It wasn't even close. The Duke Ohio State game was close, pretty much the whole game. Alabama ran Gonzaga through that entire time. Especially at the end, they broke away. Gonzaga just never looked like they had it. They were Alabama defenders were harassing Drew Timme the entire time. Chet Holmgren looked like garbage. It really Gonzaga has gone from this team that was the two-headed monster in Holmgren and Timme to being a backcourt-oriented team, and I don't think that's good for I don't think that's good for their hopes of winning it all because their best players in the front court. Holmgren did not look good. Timme put up good numbers because he's Timme and he shoots a ton, but if you watch the game, he was getting harassed all night, and sometimes his play style just isn't great. He doesn't have great court awareness as far as when he's receiving those entry passes and the defender's on his back and he doesn't know where they're at and they poke it away. I mean, it happened over and over and over again. Timme just didn't look like he was very comfortable, and Chet Holmgren could have been very comfortable. He just sucked. So Alabama beats Gonzaga, and that just totally opens up. I mean, those two teams losing to Ohio State, who's unranked, Alabama, who's 16th, totally opens up the atmosphere, the environment of college basketball. But what it does open up is Purdue being the number one team in the nation. And there is a hair on this hat that is in my peripheral. Um, Purdue being the number one team in the nation. And I think it's rightful. I think it's very deserved for Purdue to be the number one team in the nation. And of course they will now because they were the number two team. Duke loses, they're going to move up to number one. Purdue is, from what I've seen so far, the best team in college basketball, the deepest team in college basketball. Their front court is amazing. They have two of their top five players play the exact same position. They have that Edey, and I can't remember the other guy's name. Edey's like 7'5". Their front court is great, and then they have Jaden Ivey, who's great. And then, and when I say great, I mean really, really good. I mean he's a lottery pick this upcoming draft for sure. Lottery pick. Very explosive, very great athlete, and he's going to be one of the top players in college basketball this entire season. But the one player that stands out for me on that team is that Stefanovic guy. Dude has the smoothest three-point shot I've ever seen. I mean, he gets it out of his hands in a .0.000 seconds. I mean, it's immediate. Immediate. He gets it out of his hands, and it's pretty much looks like he's going to make it every time. I don't know his exact field goal percentage. I'm not following it that closely. But every time it leaves his hands, I'm like, oh, why did they leave that guy open? So they have a dominant front court, a dominant back court, and I think I talked about, did I talk about him on the last podcast? No, I didn't. I talked about him in a video where I said they're like when your fish tank or water reservoir has 10 holes in it, and you can plug them with your fingers, but you only have 10 fingers. What if it has 11 holes? Well, Purdue is the 11 holes. can't defend everything. If you focus on the backcourt, if you focus on the 3-point shooting, you're going to get demolished in the front court. If you focus on their front court, which is what they want you to do because those are their better players, they're going to destroy you with the backcourt 3-point shooting, which they have several guys in addition to Stefanovic, and their athletic driving from guys like Jaden Ivey. So they're as close to unbeatable as any team's going to get this year, and they still only beat Iowa by 7 points the other night. So I don't think any team is unbeatable, and I'm gonna love to see what the tournament looks like at the end of the year. As a Kentucky fan and as a person who knows that the majority of the people that watch this podcast either know me personally or follow the Threewind stuff, which is for college basketball wise mostly Kentucky. I want to talk about Kentucky's chances. Again, nothing has changed since the last time I talked about them. They're still only playing cupcake teams, which isn't the most, I don't like that at all, really. Cupcake after cupcake after cupcake, and you end up getting too comfortable. And when you end up playing a good team, like how we're going to play Ohio State on December 17th, who just beat Duke, we might lose because we've just played 7, 8 straight games against teams that had no chance. We knew they had no chance. We beat them all by 30, 40 points, and we come out against a team who's actually capable of beating us, and we might choke it out. I still think we have a very good team. I think this is the best team we've had since 2015. Um, Definitely the most experienced team we've had in the entire Calipari era. Uh, if you're gonna bet on Kentucky winning a championship anytime in the last 6 years, this is by far the best team to do it for. Um, but at the end of the day, they still fall into that category where they're not unbeatable. I don't see them as a super team. They're very deep, but something's missing. I'm not super crazy thrilled about this team. My hopes of winning a championship aren't through the roof with this team. I mean, they're not bad. This team is very capable of going all the way, and they're number 9 in the country right now after playing Duke, losing a bunch of cupcakes, winning all those, and now setting up to play a second half of the schedule, which is a little bit tougher. I think they have a chance, and I'd be one to argue that they're a top 5 team in the country. But we shall see as the season moves along and we actually start playing teams that are not cupcakes and not rollovers. I think that's all I have for college basketball, and I want to get to the NBA. There really is only one major NBA storyline that I can, that I feel is necessary of putting on the podcast, and that's the Golden State Warriors versus the Phoenix Suns. A little bit of background if you're not already familiar with the whole situation. The Suns went, I think, 17-0, maybe 18-0, but I think 17-0 through the months of October and November. And then they played the Warriors last Tuesday, maybe Wednesday, but I think Tuesday. And of course, the Warriors have the best record in the NBA. The Suns were on at the time, 16-game win streak. The Suns come in and beat the Warriors barely. I mean, it was a very good game. The Suns showcased several things that people weren't really paying attention to, including Mikal Bridges' extremely elite perimeter defense, DeAndre Ayton's relative destruction of the front court of Golden State, specifically Kevon Looney. He's not destroying Draymond Green by any means. I think Draymond's probably the best person to have matched up against him in the paint, but definitely destroying Kevon Looney. And the Suns, going their 17-0, and then that was on live TV. All right, that was live televised on everything, and then they are to play again the following Friday, this past Friday. And because the game was so good, because they are the two hottest teams in the league right now, the NBA decided to replace the Clippers-Lakers game with the Suns-Warriors game. Obviously, LeBron James plays for the Lakers. Paul George plays for the Clippers. I mean, and they're both the LA rivalry. I mean, this is a marquee matchup. I guarantee you, at the beginning of the year when they were putting the schedule together for the live games this year, that was a immediate must when those teams played that they were going to be on live television. Nope. The Suns of all teams and the Warriors have been bad for the last 2 years. Obviously, we know what they're capable of, but they've been bad the last 2 years. The Suns were great last year. Previous to that, have been horrible for a decade. Who would have thought that the team to replace LeBron James on national television for probably his first time in his entire career would be the Suns and the Warriors. Of course, the Warriors in the past have been great, but in recent years, not so much. That's why it's so wonderful to be in the league it is today, right? No team is so dominant as they were a couple years ago. Even the Warriors are not the super team mega dynasty they were a couple years ago. Cavs aren't the super team mega dynasty. The Lakers suck this year. The Bucks have had to make a climb. The Nets look iffy. This NBA, and just like college basketball, how I was talking about it, when there is no crazy front runner, when there is no mega dynasty or super team, it makes it so much more interesting to watch. And I think it goes like this for every sport, but especially in sports where you play 82 games in a regular season and you have these, you know, it's not like college basketball where it's anyone could win on any given night during March Madness or the NFL playoffs where one loss and you're out. It's not like that. It's a series. It's a 7-game series, and these mega dynasties and super teams really don't stand a chance of losing to underdogs in those series. They just don't. It happens so rarely. And when there's so much parity in the league and so much opportunity, I think it makes the league so much better, right? So in the West right now, you have Warriors, Suns, Jazz, Mavericks, Nuggets. The Grizzlies have been playing great. They just beat the Thunder by 73 points, the biggest margin in NBA history without their best player. The league is so open right now, and it's fantastic. It's amazing. The NBA has. If you don't have an NBA team, if you're not super interested in the NBA, if you tune in to these podcasts, to these videos to hear me talk about football, which you're crazy if you do that because I don't know that much about football. I can talk about basketball for days, not so much football. Then you're crazy. That you need to get into the NBA now, because there's no better time, right? There's villains, there's heroes, and there's every team is a contending team, right? There's some teams not so much, but if you're in that eight team playoff, you got a chance, as far as I'm concerned, because there's no mega dynasty, there's no super team. The legends of old are gone, right? LeBron's not nearly as good as he used to be. He can't stay healthy. Anthony Davis can't stay healthy. The Lakers are a sham. They're frauds. So what do you got? You have a league that's wide open for the taking. Get into the NBA, folks. I can't think of any other topics in the NBA I want to talk about, but for sure that was an important little segment. College football, and this is where the money is, right? So going into this week of college football, you had a top 4 of Georgia, Michigan, which did we talk about that last week? I think we did. I think Michigan had already made it. Georgia, Michigan, uh, Alabama, Cincinnati. All right, Cincinnati being the only undefeated. No. Cincinnati and Georgia being the only undefeated teams. Michigan having lost to Michigan State earlier in the season, but coming back, making a tremendous climb, beating Ohio State by a large margin, getting to that 2 spot. Alabama struggling. They only have 1 loss in the record, but they barely beat a very bad Auburn team to keep their spot. And then you get into these matchups, and Alabama plays Georgia. And this is a make or break game. If Alabama loses, they're out. Alabama not being in the college football playoffs is like it's like marshmallows not being on top of your sweet potato casserole that you had at Thanksgiving, right? It's like LeBron not being on a super team, right? That he built. It's like if Will Ferrell was out of Anchorman. You know what I'm saying? These things that you just aren't used to, right? Alabama being out of the college football playoffs is unheard of, and they really had a shot to miss it, right? So they played Georgia, the undefeated team, the number 1 team all year long, the beast of college football right now. They come in and they give it their all. I mean, and it really looked like Alabama knew this was their last shot, right? They had one opportunity to make it in. If they lost, they were out. If they won, they were in. There was no standoff, right? Whereas Georgia knew that if they won, they're in, obviously. If they lose, they're still in, right? So Georgia was playing great to an extent, but you could tell they weren't all the way committed to winning, right? Whereas Alabama were out there do or die. That was the best they've played all year. Alabama gets the win. And that secures Alabama's spot in the college football playoffs. Georgia, that's 2 spots secured, right? Cincinnati, of course, wins. Michigan destroys Iowa. I mean, wipes the floor with Iowa. It wasn't even close. Iowa looked like a total sham, which I'm excited for because Kentucky plays Iowa in the Citrus Bowl, I do believe, which means Kentucky has a serious chance to win a big bowl game because Iowa looked like total garbage against a Michigan team that I still consider a fraud, right? Because they did lose to Michigan State, who did get destroyed by Ohio State, who Michigan did beat, but there's still a circle there that could break, right? So I think Michigan still has that fraud look about them, right? Where same thing about Cincinnati, where they're undefeated, but they haven't played the top of the top. They played ranked opponents, but not the top guys, right? So the 4 right now is Georgia. Well, no, here's the 4 because Alabama jumps, which is stupid. Michigan should be 1, but Alabama's 1. Michigan's 2, Georgia's 3, Cincinnati's 4. Cincinnati plays Alabama, Michigan plays Georgia. Okay? Here are the first 2 out. Well, obviously not first 2 out, but the first 2 out last week were Oklahoma State and Notre Dame. Oklahoma State gets embarrassed by Baylor. Twice they get embarrassed by Baylor. First off, Baylor jumps on them, absolutely smokes them in the first half, goes up 21 to, oh, good Lord, maybe 3? I mean, Baylor looked like they were going to blow them out of the water, and you were like, Oklahoma State, this is so Oklahoma State, right? They're choking. Oklahoma State comes back in the second half. They really make it a game, and then they get to the goal line twice to win the game, pretty much. The first one, Baylor still had some time, but all the momentum was on Oklahoma State's side. You have to assume that if Oklahoma State scored on their first time at the goal line, they probably win the game. They get there, they get stumped. 1, 2, 3, running stumped. They're done. They take a kick, get a field goal. Very next time, Baylor doesn't do anything, right? Baylor is offensively inept at this point. They are not scoring. Oklahoma State gets the ball back. They make it all the way down. Fantastic push. Get to the exact same spot on the goal line. 1, 2, 3 stumps on the goal line. They run for the 4th, curves around, makes it to the pylon, gets stopped inches away from the win. Inches away from the college football playoffs, maybe. It's rough, right? So if Alabama loses this game that they beat Georgia with, and Oklahoma State wins, Oklahoma State's in the playoffs, right? So this was a huge L for Oklahoma State. Really feel bad for them, but they choked. They choked not once, but twice by letting Baylor get up on them like that, and then when they had the comeback in their grasp, they choked. The next one is Notre Dame, who simply just didn't have it, right? So they're just simply out of the 4. What is the college football playoffs looking like? So Alabama plays Cincinnati, the 1-4. Cincinnati is undefeated, the last undefeated team, and they have a serious shot, in my opinion. A lot of people are counting them out because they just saw this fantastic performance from Alabama, a performance that makes it look like Alabama is the best team in college football all year long. They forget that they're not, right? Alabama has been incredibly disappointing this year. As much as their record doesn't show it because they are 13-1 or 12-1, 13-1, they still are. They're still not the Alabama we know, right? They still barely beat Auburn. They had to come back against an Auburn team that isn't good, and they barely beat them. I mean, if Cincinnati walks out there on the field with Auburn uniforms on, they probably win the game. The only Alabama we saw this entire year that tells us they would beat Cincinnati on any given night is the one we just saw against Georgia. Who's to say that that is the Alabama we see when Cincinnati and Alabama take the field? I don't think you can say that with ultimate confidence in what you're saying. I think Cincinnati gives Alabama a very good game. And I'll be completely honest, and I'm being completely honest here. Don't hate me. And if Charlie was here, he would be going off because the only thing he really watches is Alabama football. He's a huge Alabama football fan, and I did want to get him on the podcast this week after that happened. But again, like I said at the beginning, it was short notice. I think Cincinnati beats Alabama. I think Cincinnati beats Alabama. And it's tough to get on here and say that because it is Cincinnati and it is Alabama, and what we just saw from Alabama was so great. I think Cincinnati beats them, right? Georgia had no urgency in that game. Alabama was playing a half Georgia team. Not half because the guys were out, half mentally, right? They did not care if they lost that game. Obviously, it would have been nice if they won the game, but they, A, came into that thinking it was going to be an easy win. B, came into that knowing that if they lost, they were still in the playoffs. And C, knowing that if they lost, they were still in the playoffs, probably playing Michigan, who they know they can beat. I think Alabama beat a mentally weak Georgia team that we're not going to see again. Alabama could play just as great, but who's to say Cincinnati isn't just as great? Cincinnati isn't going to be that mentally weak team. This is their shot. This is their shot. And the same goes for Michigan, who I do think are frauds. This is their shot. They're in the playoffs. These are not teams you see in the playoffs every year. These are not teams you really ever see in the playoffs very often. I mean, they're in there, but not very often. I think Cincinnati comes out, not only gives Alabama a fantastic game, I think they win. I think they beat Alabama. I really do. I think Cincinnati's going to beat Alabama. Georgia and Michigan is a totally different look. So Georgia, in my opinion, is still the best team in college football. I think, like I said, they were mentally not there against Alabama. Alabama gave it all they had. I mean, they knew it was make or break. For this game, I just don't think Michigan has much of a chance. As much as I do think Michigan should be the number one team in the seeds, because Alabama barely beats Auburn. Then they beat Georgia, which is, of course, the biggest win of their season. But Michigan makes this fantastic climb to the 2 spot just to get hopped over by Alabama while they're smoking Iowa by 40 points. I don't know about it. It makes me uncomfortable. I really think Alabama and Georgia should be playing in the first round, but the committee doesn't want to see that. They want to see the championship of the Blue Bloods, Alabama-Georgia championship. I think Michigan should be the first seed. I think Alabama and Georgia should be playing in the first round. I think Michigan and Cincinnati should be playing in the first round, but I digress. What we got is what we got, and what we got is Georgia versus Michigan. Michigan is a team that I continue to say is fraudulent. Georgia is a team in which I think is still the best team in college football. I do think Michigan gives Georgia a game. I think Michigan, like Cincinnati, knows this is their shot. They can win it here if they really play good. I got to take Georgia. I mean, as much as I think Michigan is going to go out there balls to the wall, it's now make or break for everybody. You know what I mean? Georgia has been the team that to beat the whole year. They finally get beat, right? They get humbled a little bit. I don't think they lose again, especially not to Michigan. Michigan, a team that gets beat by Michigan State, who is an incredibly fraudulent team this year, against Georgia, who gets beat by Alabama playing at 100% efficiency, best they've played all year, and they don't blow them out of the water. I mean, it wasn't a close game per se, but it wasn't 40 points like Michigan was beating on Iowa. I think Georgia wins this game. I think we saw a Georgia that we're not going to see again against Alabama. And I think we saw a Michigan that we're going to continue to see, but I just don't think Michigan can play like how they did against Iowa against a team like Georgia. Georgia's defense is what pushes them over the edge, right? They have the best defense in college basketball. Basketball? Football. It didn't look like it against Alabama. That was the most points allowed, obviously, this year by an Alabama team who has not been the best offensive or defensive team all year. I don't see it from Michigan. I as much as I'm trying to talk myself into picking the double upset, I just don't think Michigan beats Georgia. So here's how I look at it. I think, and I'm going to keep with my picks. I think Cincinnati beats Alabama first round. I think Georgia beats Michigan. And then I think, man, it would be cool if Cincinnati won it all, wouldn't it? That would be really cool. I think Georgia wins it all. As much as it would be really cool to see Cincinnati win, Michigan winning would be better than Alabama or Georgia winning, trust me, but Georgia winning is better than Alabama winning. As long as Alabama doesn't win, I'm kind of happy. Sorry, Charlie. But yeah, I think Cincinnati beats Alabama. I think Alabama has had their moment in the spotlight, their moment of glory, their ultimate underdog story, even if they are Alabama. And I think they're going to get shot straight down by a Cincinnati team who's not playing, who's going to go into the championship game of the college football playoffs undefeated. And maybe that chip on their shoulder is just what they need to beat Georgia in the championship. I don't know. I can't 100% tell you that Cincinnati doesn't stand a chance. I think they do. and I think they've been overlooked all year long. And I think people saying that they didn't, even as an undefeated team, they weren't in the four. That's crazy. Cincinnati deserved that spot just as much as anybody else in here. The only undefeated team here. Man, a week ago, I'm taking Georgia over every single team by a large margin. After seeing what Alabama did to Georgia, do I want to take Cincinnati all the way? I don't think I can do it. I really don't think I can take Cincinnati all the way. I'd love to see Cincinnati win, but I don't think I can take them all the way. I think Georgia wins. I think Georgia will be your college football champion this year. Um, what does this mean for football? It's great for football. Clemson sucked this year. LSU sucked this year. Alabama has been very disappointing this year. Georgia has been great, but they got upset at the end of the year. Alabama winning would suck. Georgia winning isn't the worst of all possibilities. That would be Alabama winning. But Cincinnati winning would be pretty historic for college football. It would make just like the parity in sports right now is like no other, right? It's the better than it ever has been. Again, we already talked about it in the NBA segment and the college basketball segment. In college football, I think you have a chance to get that same parity, right? So, Oklahoma State this year. Notre Dame, who of course is a powerhouse historically, but recently not so much. Alabama, of course, is always there. Georgia is usually there. Ohio State usually there. Clemson there. LSU there, but this year, LSU gone. Clemson gone. Ohio State choke artist frauds gone. Alabama disappointing and not a team that you think is going to sweep everybody at the end of the year. So they're teetering, right? Even if they are the number one seed, which isn't deserving in my opinion. What you have is a college football landscape that is looking better than it has in years. So my completed bracket going into the playoffs is Cincinnati taking out Alabama, Georgia taking out Michigan, Georgia beating Cincinnati. I think we go into next year with a totally different look on college football. I think we go into next year with a totally different look on college basketball, to be fair. This has been a great week for college football. This has been a great week for sports. Usually, I can't really get into college football that much, right? It's just not something that I am crazy following because I'm a Kentucky fan, right? And we usually don't have a great football team. This year has been the best in a long, long time. And we are going to destroy Iowa in the Citrus Bowl. However, from now on, if Kentucky keeps doing what they're doing, I intend to watch college football regularly, and I have this year more than any time in my whole life. I am incredibly excited for next year's college football season, as well as I am for the remainder of the basketball seasons. I think that is all I have to talk about on this podcast episode number 14. I didn't do NFL today simply because NFL games that happened today, nothing crazy happened. Actually, something crazy did happen. The Lions got their first win on a last-second catch. The Lions did get their first win. They are not going to be completely forgotten, or they are going to now be completely forgotten because they weren't a team that went winless. They have a 1-12-1 record, or is it 1-11-1 record. But as far as the NFL goes, that's really the only notable topic I can think of. The Seahawks did win, which is surprising. The Bills play tomorrow, where this will come out before that game happens. Let's pray that the Bills beat the Patriots. For not only my fantasy team, but also my mental sanity. I think that's all I have for this episode of the Threewind podcast. This has been Ethan on episode number 14, and I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to title it. Make sure you check out Threewind on every single social media. I say this on every episode, but we are really legitimately on every single social media under Threewind Sports, other than like random prehistoric or obscure, any major social media. I'm still trying to build TikTok. I'm trying to build the YouTube channel. Of course, if you are watching this on YouTube and you enjoyed what I talked about today, make sure you like and subscribe. If you are listening to this on anything else, make sure you rate and follow. Is that all I have? I think that's all I have. Um, make sure you have a good Christmas and or Hanukkah if you're celebrating, and I will see you next week.